EDUC 112 class. Welcome. Oh man, I got a great guest for you today. Yvonne Carillo. Did I say that right? Did I finally get the roll of the tongue right?
Yeah, but you butchered the back end of it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Jeez. Mom and mom only gave me 3 letters. Tim. So
I
boring.
appreciate the effort.
I tried. Irish, it takes us a lot of, Jamesons or something that get that roll going. So, but hey, class, this is going to be this is really going to help you guys with your end of the class presentation. And Yvonne, thanks so much for being here today. As I told you, we're basically studying policy, legislation, and that's your wheelhouse. That's what you do. How did you get to this point of your career? You're sitting in there with CAP advisors and you're rubbing arms with important people. How did you get to this point?
Yeah, so it certainly stems back to my college days and student government. And then that led to me entering the legislature through a fellowship program, the Capitol Fellows Program, and working as a legislative aide for an assembly person. And then continued to work in the legislature and the Capitol and in a district office for 7 years or so, and then made the transition to lobbying, and then have been lobbying within the early education through 12th grade education space for the last 6-7 years.
Did your family encourage you always to be a little bit of a rebel or advocate for, those that don't have?
Yeah, and I appreciate you asking that because, I mean, that's, I guess, actually where it actually stems from is my parents and their community political activism and engagement. And that was something that was always emphasized, and being conscious of different inequities and using our voice and using resources, and being active in the process. And so when I was a kid, that would mean sometimes, grabbing a sign and joining picketing and marches. And other times that would mean me being a little kid helping around the house while my parents were hosting fundraisers for different candidates. And certainly the importance of voting, but always just being aware of what's taking place, of policies that are being considered and enacted. And I think believing that we as individuals can impact the process, and that if we're not engaged, then there's almost no reason to voice unhappiness, because again, there's a way for us all to impact the process. And so I guess I'll stop there. No, I appreciate the question. It definitely goes back to my parents, though, without a doubt, and their engagement in the political and policy process, without a doubt.
Oh, that's beautiful. We had Sarah Bachez on here a couple of weeks ago, and she talked a lot about her background and her family and being from LA. But I you and I have talked about this, the lack of top end lobbyists of color is fascinating to me. I mean, we talk a lot about how more and more women are finally getting into I would say the chairs above you, right? But the lack of Latino men is shocking to me in a state that's majority Latino. Does that bother you, or how do you work around that as you start working on some of your policies and ledge bills? Because you're kind of rare air, what I see out there.
Yeah, no, it certainly bothers me, and it's certainly something that I'm very much aware of. Just my lived experiences and growing up, became very aware at a young age of the color of my skin and what that represents to some folks. And but that was coupled with the fact of just what I got from my parents, and just being very proud in my background, and being proud to be Chicano, and it's a proud history that I have the honor to be connected to. And so I'm proud of that. So as I've entered the workforce and navigated these different environments, it's always been clear that there's an underrepresentation in this field, particularly as you described, the higher and higher you go up the ladder. So it's almost a daily experience to this day, where I'm in rooms where I'm the only person of color in those spaces, and the importance of, I think, kicking down doors and providing, using whatever means and influence I have to open up the door for other folks who look like me, to other communities of color to come in behind me. That's important, because the conversations and the sensitivities and the not to mention just the lived experiences, all that's important in terms of how we shape policy, because all those things, whether it's consciously or not, those things play out in the types of policies we see enacted statewide, at the federal level, at the local level. And so if we don't have people in these spaces, in these decision-making rooms that reflect the communities of California, then our policies aren't going to reflect the diverse needs and of Californians as well. And will oftentimes, intentionally or not, or unintentionally, target and these communities in a negative light. So the importance of getting in these spaces, using the influence and the opportunity you have once you get in those spaces, because that certainly has been an area of discomfort that I've had to work through. Where early in my career I'd be in these spaces and there was a lot of discomfort to speak out and to not wanting to be that one brown person who's raising these issues. But I think what I've gotten more and more confident and comfortable with is that if I'm not raising these issues, then nobody is. And that if I'm not using, my ability in those spaces to raise these perspectives, then it's a missed opportunity. And unfortunately, we just don't have that luxury to miss those opportunities. The communities don't have that luxury, right? Because it's not really prolific for us to be in those spaces. So can't underscore the importance enough of getting into these spaces, creating opportunities for others, and then making sure we utilize those spaces once we're in them too.
Well, with this class, we studied the history of CT, and I could probably teach this class for 25 weeks, but we get 6 weeks together. And this and I know this, that when all said and done, you kind of build up I work with the class on what's their why. Why do they want a CT degree? Who are they as a person? What adversity of your life? And it kind of leads to what I call their secret sauce. So, I think Sarah's secret sauce that she stood out to me was she's been in some cases where she's failed 100 times and finally hit number 101, right, on a bill or something. What's your secret sauce? What's 2 or 3 secret sauce you have to say, I did my best to move this initiative or policy or bill on? What's your secret sauce?
I think it's kind of goes back to the last question, and in some respects, and never losing sight of why I entered this field to begin with. And so, just my experience in the educational system personally, but also that of my peers growing up. But since then, all the interactions I've had with students from underrepresented, underserved, marginalized communities, and recognizing the needs of reform in our educational system that best serves these students from these communities. And so always trying to keep that as my North Star, and making sure that I'm seeing these different policies through that lens, and that I'm inspired and motivated to use my voice to be an advocate on their behalf. And so at the end of the day, I think as long as I'm using my abilities, my position to give voice to those communities, and doing my best to advocate on their behalf, then I feel good about the effort that's put forth. But I think the other point that I'll just touch on is that this is by no means an individual endeavor, and by no means could any meaningful change be done with my individual participation in this. And so it very much requires collective efforts. And And so that also, I think, is part of, I guess, how you describe the secret sauce is trying to engage others in this process who normally wouldn't be engaged, providing them the tools, providing them the information, the access points, helping prep them. So students, educators, community members, helping them recognize the importance and recognizing their ability to influence the process. That's really important for me as well. And again, it's just, I'm fully conscious of the fact that that's the only way that meaningful change will happen is by collective, persistent effort. So.
Yeah, I try to tell the students, California is a big, 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 big state, right? And there's 6 million kids that look up to us to help them. And I was at Bret Hart school today. When you see all these beautiful career tech and FFA programs, it takes the likes of someone like you to fight for these kids to have this type of opportunity. Because if it was kind of the old 1950s, we'd have only, A through English, math, blah, 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 versus some more diverse offerings. The purpose of this class, this is kind of our last question to you, is, this last week, you and I, I texted you and I go, oh my God, this assemblywoman wants us to testify in an hour. And you go, Tim, do you have anybody? I go, I don't have anybody. Can you go do it? And you guys found somebody to do it within your office. But I don't think people realize you only get 2 or 3 minutes to, you have some pre-work done, but and I know you only get 2 or 3 minutes in front of a senator, assemblyman panel, or a workforce board, or, if you're gonna do a grant or contract, you only get 2 or 3 minutes. Can you give us a couple tips if you're going to present to me on an issue? Just give us 2 or 3 things that stand out. How do you get their attention so they're not texting, or because you can tell the difference between somebody who's groomed as well as you are to get their attention for 2 or 3 minutes, and the other ones where if you screw up in the first 30 seconds, they're back on their phone texting their staff.
Yeah. No, I'll you definitely are right in how you characterize it in terms of the limited amount of time that one has and when in these parts of the process. But if I may, Tim, I think it's important to point out that that influencing policy outcomes and decisions that are made aren't done with just 2-minute testimonies in committee. And so policies are shaped by all the work that goes on behind the scenes that no one ever sees. And so all the buildup and the lead up work. So Tim, you shed light on a bill that, that we were working on collaboratively and that we did testify on. But we also have been engaged with the Assemblywoman's office directly on numerous occasions, talking to them about the policy and what works and what doesn't, and why it's important to students who are from rural communities, right? And suggesting amendments, meeting with not only the author's office, but the Assembly Education Committee, that is the first committee that was reviewing that bill, and talking to them through it and making sure that they understood the importance of it and worked with them on language and talking to other stakeholders, other associations and school district leaders and stressing the importance there and having them sign on and support. And so I just want to make sure that the members of your class and just don't think that it's, that policy outcomes are shaped solely by these 2-3 minute presentations.
Nah, listen, really... let me cut you off for a second.
Sure.
You're absolutely right. Right. So you know what it's like. All you want to do is get that committee to go, you know what, Taylor, that's a good idea. Let's move that forward. And then it is the brainiacs, not the Tim Taylors, but it's more like you that work on the details of the policy, which could take hours, if not months, if not year, right? So I totally agree with you. And that's why I only get the class for a little bit, but I agree with you. You have to, but also even the policy people have to have that passion, that flame inside of their body to run something new across this bureaucratic state, right? I mean, you people follow people, not ideas. And that's what my class has learned, is that they will follow you if you are so passionate from your core on an issue for kids.
For sure. Yeah, no, and I think that would certainly be part of the advice is talk about how this is how these, you know, I mean, these bills that you're putting forth or proposals that you're putting forth make a direct connection to kids. Don't let that be what you lead with. Let that make sure that that's clearly comes across, how these policy changes or funding proposals are good for kids. I think certainly when you're presenting to a member of the legislature or members of the legislature, you're going to want to localize it for them as much as possible. So, you know, I mean, doing your homework on what district or districts these members represent, what their communities look like, the student demographics, CTE programs in their communities, and speaking to those. So really localizing this for them to be able to understand how these proposals are important to members of their communities, constituents who will be voting in their election. You know, I mean, you don't have to make that connection, and they'll make that connection by knowing that if this is important to members of my community, that's part of the electorate. So that's really important, and just making sure that you're clear on what it is that you're supporting. So often in these settings, people are talking for a minute before they even get to what it is that they're advocating for.
Yeah.
And then when they wrap up, you ask yourself, what were they saying? What were they for? So make sure that that's just clear and communicated in plain speak about what it is that you're advocating for at the end of the day. What change and who would benefit from it.
Hey, Vaughn, got to wrap it up, but I want to say I've had the distinct pleasure to work with you more directly this year, and I know good leaders when I see them, and I told this to the class, but I also told anyone who hangs out with me, the number one thing is helping others, right? So I always encourage my class, you see a good speaker who may connect with you or help you move forward. I know if I hooked you up with one of our students, you'd help guide them a little bit. It's one of the things my people do. And I know, you know, a lot of us are searching for who we are in life, especially our class, right? They're trying to take a next step. So I encourage you all, I'll hold you to that. When someone asks, I want to talk to Yvonne, and maybe over a beer or over the phone or something. But man, that was a really good interview. I'm telling you, I've done a lot of these, and this was really encourage our students to kick some butt. And if not, I'll fail them and I'll blame you. What do you think?
Tim, I really appreciate the opportunity, and it was an honor to be able to engage in this conversation with you. And I have so much respect for you and your leadership and what you're doing for kids statewide. And so thank you. And
Anytime,
by all means, please give my contact information. I'm definitely accessible to any and all of your students.
Okay. All right. Take care. I know you got another appointment coming up. So thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care.